Okay. And we're here live. I'm the Kingpin with the Bacon Cartel. And right over there next to me is Victor Kendlehart. And Victor and I have known each other for, and I was thinking about this earlier this morning, 8 years? McCrana was in 4 years.
Yeah, he was in office. He was the president of the ACF. I don't know what I was really doing there.
Well, you were like the junior president of the ACF.
I was the president of the Young Chefs Club for the first time it was of its inception.
Right.
And I mean, I'd been to a few national events with the ACF, and I did some competitions with them. I was trying to possibly get on the culinary junior Olympic team, and it didn't work out. It just wasn't a schedule. It was a scheduling conflict, as well as I was moving around the country way too much. And there was a lot of loyalty that you had to have for them in the sense that like every third week you had to leave your property where you were going to be at, be supported by your property, and then go practice somewhere in the States and then come back. And that was something that I knew pretty early on, that it was a great idea to probably try to be part of it. But I also wasn't ready for it either too. So I was with the ACF. I met Tom McCrana. He asked me if I wanted to be the president of the Young Chefs Club. I first said no.
He asked you or asked told?
Asked told. That's kind of how it happened. And I first met him because when I was getting my associate degree from a community college, and I had to do an externship at a cooking facility, and so I went and did it at the Desmond Hotel in Malvern, where he was at, Malvern, Pennsylvania. And he was a very nice man, very great guy to work with. I have a lot of respect for him. And he just was one of those guys, man. He just made you smile. I mean, he was a cool boss. He was a really, really cool boss, very down to earth. But man, he was funny. Oh my God, yeah. He could just put a smile on anybody's face, and that was something that I tried to put into a lot of kitchens I worked in, is building that culture of at least just smiling good morning, saying a joke, rolling your eyes, do something, be human, and that was kind of what I got a lot from Tom McCrana there. But so I would do I would go and do these, regional events and national events, and you would be there. And I don't even know how one thing kind of led to another. I mean, I know you were with Food Fanatics, and we really didn't work it all together, Nope. But man, we laughed a lot.
Yeah, it was mostly in Tom's room afterwards. You and your friends. Do you remember that in Orlando when they had those macaroons after the president's dinner? And that room, the view, I mean, it was just unbelievable.
We did yeah. We have some skeletons there, I think.
Yeah.
And then we went to we had our activities chair, Cody Beck. I flew him out to Phoenix, Arizona, on a one-way ticket. We didn't have money to get him back.
Oh, that's right. I remember that one. Yeah, and everybody was talking about how it was like still 100 degrees out, and it was during the guy that was serial shooter.
Right.
And I'm like, the reason why you guys have a serial shooter, because everyone keeps on saying, but it's a dry heat. It's still 100.
Listen, at some point, hot is fucking hot.
Right?
It is. Hot is just hot. And actually, there was a lot of firsts in Phoenix. One of my firsts in Phoenix was going to a Total Wine for the first time. That was awesome. That was great.
Mine was an In-N-Out Burger. That was the first time I went to an In-N-Out Burger.
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. They're good. They're really good.
Yeah. Animal.
So we had a great time there. I mean, we tried to do a lot of networking, and then, like I said, Cody didn't have a plane ticket back, so eventually we started asking people if he could just stay at their house.
Yeah, I remember.
And one guy says, "Well, it was like this 30-year-old community college student or something like that was being there to help volunteer, whatever. He says, well, my mother lives in Phoenix. You can just stay with her." And we're like, okay, yeah, whatever. Next day, the guy brought his 90-year-old mother to meet Cody. I swear, can't make this up. To meet Cody. And Cody's like, I really appreciate it. And then we found some flight on Frontier or something like that for like $200 to get him back. And so I was like, I got enough money on my credit card. I can get you back.
That's too funny.
Yeah. We were young and stupid. We still have a sense of it, though. I mean, we just committed to whatever we tried to do, be the best we possibly could, and then we figure out how to do it once we were realizing that we were kind of in trouble. And then along the way, if we had a few cocktails, we had a few cocktails.
More than a couple. But that's a whole other story for another show.
For another time.
What's interesting is, though, I mean, I put the call out, who would want to be on it, and you said I would definitely love to be on there.
Right.
And our paths have basically crossed since the ACF. We were just talking behind the scenes. Just so everybody knows, once I do these, I actually call the person up to do like a quick test, and usually it's a quick test. It got to the point where he and I actually got on a conversation that was pretty intense, and I went downstairs and I'm like, this is going to be a great conversation. Hopefully we can remember what the hell I wrote down some notes. I can actually bring that back into the conversation.
Right. No worries.
So let me go over where you've been and where you have, where you are now, besides being in Pennsylvania,
right,
which is quite a story in itself. So you have traveled to London, South Africa, Cape Town, Johannesburg, Durban, Norway.
Norway. I was there for the congressional chefs Congress.
Gotcha.
That's where I met Roberto, which was another. So he and I became ambassadors for the Young Chefs Club International for World Chefs. So we were pretty much in charge of the Western Hemisphere. And so Roberto, I was originally in the Western Hemisphere, and then the problem is I don't speak a lot of languages. So Roberto speaks Spanish. So he was over there at the same time. He was competing. He was an assistant for one of the pastry chefs from Costa Rica. And then oddly enough, he's actually living in Minnesota right now. So he was pretty much in charge of like Mexico down, and I was like the United States. And then we actually had an ambassador already for Canada as well. So, and we still try to, I mean, I've tried to contact them a few times, but they've been a little bit radio silent. So we're kind of in this little land of limbo, which is everybody is in this land of limbo. So right now we're just kind of, that's kind of on the back burner right now.
Gotcha.
But, yeah, so we were there for the World Congress there, for the Chefs Congress there.
So then you were at the Vintage Club. That was back in 2013. Then Interstate Hotels, IHG, we talked about that.
Right.
That's where you got the idea for Task Force. We'll talk about that in a sec. And then Jean Georges, who we also talked about. And then you have your own concept that you do called Culinary Solutions LLC.
Yes.
And then you are off to where next? It says...
I'm off to Idaho next because that's where my full-time job technically is, but it's only for 5 months out of the year. So it is called the Idaho Rocky Mountain Ranch. It's a private guest ranch, about 1,000 acres in central Idaho at the base of the Sawtooth Mountains, which separates the mountain range from Boise to the western side or the eastern side of the state.
So there's actually people that go there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. In Sun Valley. Yeah, in Sun Valley, Idaho. So Sun Valley is about 60 miles north or south of there, I'm sorry. And so the best way I can kind of put it is no one really hears about Sun Valley unless you're a massive skier, but they have great golf there. And I kind of like to think it's kind of like the West Coast Hamptons in a lot of different ways. Our biggest demographic is from San Francisco, Los Angeles, California, and then, of course, the Northeast. There's a lot of people that come from the Northeast there, too. So really what happens in the summertime, it's a town of 63 people, and then literally it explodes to about 4,000 people through the whole summer. Some of the best whitewater rafting is there. So it's right there at the Salmon River. It's the second best whitewater rafting in the country, short of the Colorado River for the Grand Canyon. And then there's great fly fishing. There's a massive amount of hiking, dirt bikes. There's razor rides. It's one of the entrances to the Frank Church Wilderness, which is the largest wilderness in the United States, and no one really knows about it. It's about 900 square miles. It covers 3/4 of Idaho into Montana and stuff. So it's very, very much it's definitely outdoor driven. You're not going there if you're not active. And then, of course, there's lakes there that are all iceberg fed. They're all like 51 degrees to get into, but no one really cares. Like, it's a ball. It's a lot of fun. And so really the goal of that resort out there is doing simple food very, very well, complement the scenery, and just provide this simple, recognizable, exceptional food that you possibly can. So, and it's hard, actually. It's really, really hard because they don't want to be Relais and Chateau. They don't want to be Michelin. They don't want to be AAA, Five Diamond, anything. Our ownership is very awesome. I mean, they are just salt of the earth people. They trust us, which is something that I've never actually truly got to see and execute at the same time. Like, it's one thing to say it, then it's another thing to do it. But these guys truly believe in you know what, you're put there for a reason, do it. And with that patience comes very, very high expectations. But that is a really cool environment to be in. So, one of the things that we're tasked with is, how do you make a burger amazing? I mean, everyone knows what a burger is. Like, how do you make chili amazing? Okay, your mom has a chili recipe. My mom has a chili recipe. How do you make barbecue phenomenal? And really, it's the patience and the time in doing that. And so, how do we do those things extremely well and simple? And that's really, really tough, because you're competing against memories. Right? You're competing against things that you have no control over and you don't have a firsthand knowledge of. And you're also dealing with people's interpretation. And it's nothing extraordinarily, fine dining is easy to some degree, right? You get some exotic ingredient, you do some amazing meal prep. The hardest part about fine dining is consistency, right, which is the hardest part in all restaurants, right? In any restaurant is consistency. Mm-hmm. But, you're banking on your guests maybe understanding a little bit, but not truly knowing the whole story of an ingredient or of a plate concept, or of the experience that you're in, or whatever. You're kind of subliminally banking on that. Here, it's raw. It is what it is. You know what the burger is. You know what a meatloaf is. How do you make meatloaf amazing? Well,
part of the problem too is like someone like myself who lives here in Florida, South Florida to be exact, being in such a food mecca.
Right.
I don't know what's food of Idaho. No offense
to
potatoes.
Right.
Because that's the interpretation of what most people have.
Right. So, well, the thing that's kind of amazing is, like, okay, so you take a step back, and what makes food indigenous to areas? Okay, there's a few things that you can look at. You can look at the trails, right? You can look at the people who the production trails. So you look at the Silk Road and stuff like that. You can kind of see how the Chinese invented ice cream. They invented noodles. Well, how did they get to Italy? Well, because Marco Polo went through, made the Silk Road, and brought all those things from there to there. So that's why it's indigenous there. So there's always this concept of sometimes it's not what grows there, it's what travels through there. Okay. Now, in Idaho, there's like 10 roads that take you somewhere. Okay. There's not much there. So what do they have? Well, they had Native Americans, right? They had the Basque regions there, Basque influence there from the sheep herders, which brought in French influence into there. And then when you think of those really rural places, I'm talking about like Montana and Wyoming and South Dakota, North Dakota, Idaho, right? Like the states that no one really kind of understands and knows about. Their growing season is really short, right? Like if you take a look at the parallel of it, right, it goes through Maine. Maine doesn't have a great growing season either. So, you have to kind of take a look at, and then you keep on going over, it goes into Norway or it goes into Sweden, and it goes like, nothing really grows there to begin with. But they do have microclimates, right? So in Sun Valley and there, they have some of the best fertile there. They have some of the best crops there. They have amazing produce and stuff like that. So when I think of indigenous and regional food there, you can't think of the slow food movement of 50 miles or less or something like that. It's got to be, hey, can you get to it in one day? Hey, there's your local food. Now, what they also produce is not so much fruits and vegetables, but they have amazing protein companies out there. But they have amazing vodka.
Well, actually, potatoes.
Right. They do.
But they
have amazing spirits out there, not just with the people, but the liquors that they consume. They have they have amazing wines that are kind of coming up out of nowhere because of the volcanic rock that's there, the soil that it is actually pretty darn perfect for it. The problem is it's just a short growing season, so you're not getting amazing quality. It's not Sonoma at all.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But I would say it's better than the Finger Lakes wine. If I had to put it up against something. But they have amazing bison farms. They have amazing elk farms. They have amazing venison farms, pork, duck farms. I mean, they've got amazing amount of animal husbandry practices that are out there. And the coolest thing about them is they are more environmentally driven out there than any person who's going to picket a fence. I'm a very firm believer that like the number one environmentalists in the world right now are not people picketing, are not politicians, are not nutritionists working for something. They are actual farmers. They're actual ranchers. And their respect for water rights, their respect for the environment, their respect for the life of bringing something and birthing it and growing it and just raising it is incredible. Their relationship with the environment is something so special that no one talks to a farmer about what they should do environmentally. They always talk to an activist. They always talk to a biotech company.
Yeah,
which is really kind of frustrating because it's like at the end of the day, the valley that we're in Idaho, there in Stanley, my uncle's a cattle rancher out there, and he's got 2 or 3 different ranches out there, and the town of Stanley. And this is not my hometown. I'm a visitor at the end of the day. Like this is something that I should not have a lot of opinions about, but it gets a little personal sometimes because they have a lot of restrictions that are constantly being developed from environmentalism that people need to understand that 6 generations or 5 generations or 4 generations of farmers and ranchers and stuff like that who have done this for a long time, who have been respectful to the environment. What hasn't been respectful is the amount of development from people coming in, right? And that's where it gets hairy, is because the second people own land, they think they're entitled to an opinion, and they are. But let's also recognize other people have rights too.
Well, that's the entitlement whole conversation too,
right?
And
there's a lot of things I just said in that whole conversation, but the biggest thing is, yeah, go ahead.
No, we've had great conversations prior, and getting to this point and bringing some stuff out, and you've mentioned some stuff I want to get back to. Mm-hmm. But how long have you been involved in culinary? What drove you to become a chef?
So, I'll answer your question with a question, and this is how I interview almost every single cook, sous chef, chef de cuisine that I've ever had. What is your first food memory? And my first food memory, I have 2 of them. When I was about, I don't know, like 4th grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade. So I don't know how old you are, like 7, 6.
No, I have a 1st grader. She's 7.
Oh, so, I don't.
Yeah, you're like 9, 8 or 9, 9 or 10.
I know it was in 4th grade.
Yeah.
And we would go to these local high school football games, and the parents would go and all watch the games in the bleachers. Then all the kids would go underneath the bleachers because at that time you could. And we just ran and we got into trouble and we got into fights and we just got dirty and messy. And while we were experiencing that, one of my best friends to this day, his name is Ben. His parents owned a kettle corn company on the side. They just did it for football games, like some flea markets. And as we were playing, you could smell them making this kettle corn. And it was just this most amazing kettle corn. And so we played, you'd hear the kettle corn popping and you'd smell the caramel cooking. And then, at the end of the day, we'd go over and we would take down the American flag, we'd fold it, and then our reward was we'd go over to the kettle corn stand and we'd get a free little bag of kettle corn. And it was warm, and it just made you smile and rub your stomach. I mean, it was so good. And so that was one of my first food memories. And my second food memory was, I'm a little bit older. My dad asked me in 7th grade what I wanted to be, and I said, I want to be a politician. I want to be, I want to change the world and this, that, and the other, and get into political science. And my dad said, Vic, you're not mean enough. So little So I said, well, you know what? I really watch a lot of cooking shows. When I was younger, we watched a lot of Sarah Moulton, Malto Mario, when Mario Batali was doing a lot of history with his food and cooking on that little bar with those three people. You have no idea who the heck they were. When they had the old school Iron Chef Americas from Japan.
Oh, that my
Right?
favorite. My favorite.
I mean, that was the first time I was really like, some people watch like Mortal Kombat and they watch a lot of Asian movies or Asian centric movies, and they all have that the mouths move, they're all dubbed
Right,
with English
right.
titles, and that was the first time I'd ever seen like English subtitle or English dubbed movie or English dubbed videos and completely not care. And I remember just watching it on mute and just watching these guys learn and move, and like, some people watch it for the competition of the food. I love to watch it because of the movement, and I wanted to see. I remember taking little notes and saying like, wow, like they moved with purpose. They moved with extraordinary amount of efficiency. So, for instance, you never saw somebody with an empty hand. So if they took a pan away while they were down there picking up another pan, and what that brought into me was, if you're walking out of a walk-in, don't ever walk out of a walk-in empty-handed. That's silly. Because that's wasted opportunity. That's wasted efficiency, and you're working towards. Yes, you got to leave eventually, but there's something that can be consolidated, something that can be broken down. There's always some like apple that hasn't one apple in a box or something like that. So I would watch a lot of Iron Chef Americas and those kind of things, and then my dad would break down chicken, maybe 4 nights out of the week, a whole chicken, and all completely wrong. But he did it. He did it how he knew how to do it, and he would like cracking things and like take like right down the chicken, hit the keel bone, just whack it down, take the chicken, fold it out, crack all the backs, and like we would do homework, looking out onto the on this little bar stools, and looking down to the kitchen. And then one day my dad's like, Vic, you can break down the chicken. And I thought that was just amazing. I thought that was one of the most amazing things. And then when I was 15, I wanted a car, and my dad said, well, we have this vehicle that you can use and stuff like that, but the only way you can use it is if you pretty much get a job. So at 15, I got my first job. I actually had to wait 2 extra months because I was 15. I got in trouble because I was underage. My first job was Texas Roadhouse. Opened up a place in Hanover, Pennsylvania.
So we're talking about the same Texas Roadhouse that the CEO is not going to take a bonus, or same Texas
Right.
Roadhouse. Okay, just want to make sure.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. And so that was something that happened. And I got this weird screen thingy here. Okay, there we go. Okay, cool. I had the thing pop up on me.
It's all right.
So then I learned
That's
that.
what happens when you watch too much porn, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. You got to put those. We're not even having cocktails yet.
Can you believe that?
I mean,
But I just want to point out to everybody, do you notice the coffee cup? That's right. That's me.
so this is my coffee cup. Okay, so Stanley, Idaho. This is where I work in Idaho. I've had this cup for like, I don't know. I've been going to Idaho since I was a little kid. So when I got to go out there and have this opportunity to go work out there, I first said no because it was such a sacred place for me. It was my decompression spot in this world. You don't want to work in your decompression spot.
Right.
And I called up a few other chefs of mine and said, hey, like these guys need help. Can you help them? One was out of the country. One was in North Carolina. One was in Florida. And I said, well, you know what? I had to fly to Pittsburgh to onboard another chef. So I flew back 2 weeks later and finished the season out for them. And then I got asked to stay on board with that afterwards. But yeah, so anyway, kind of going back to your thing, your question, how did I get into it? It wasn't supposed to work out either. Right? I don't know who you are. There's no person in my mind that at 6 years old or 15 years old or 18 years old, someone wanted to be an executive chef. I think that's baloney. Really?
Yeah. I've always wanted.
Really?
I got.
Really?
Yeah. I got bit really, really, really young, and I'm not. I grew up way before your time.
Right.
I grew up with Julia Childs and Graham Cure and
Okay.
what's its name? The Galloping Gourmet. And one of those things, my mom, God bless her, she worked 5 days a week. My dad worked 5 days a week, and yet 6 days a week we had a meal on the table that my mom cooked.
Right.
And Sundays were very precious. I've always kind of looked at Sundays as very precious, even being in the industry, because that was family time. That's when both sets of grandparents came over the house. My mom did an immaculate whatever been shepherd's pie or brisket or roast beef, and everything was from scratch back then. My treat
Right. There was
was
no convenience products.
right. My treat was a Swanson's Hungry Man, for breakfast or lunch rather.
Right.
Those were my treats. But then, I was just reading a magazine and I saw this picture of this food, and I said, "Mom, can I cook this?" And she's like, "Well, yeah." And it was like half the ingredients I couldn't even get in the store because I was 12. And
Right.
I just remember talking to a friend of my teens. I always wanted to become a lawyer, but I wanted to become a lawyer because I wanted the money to fund my restaurant. But and I
Okay.
always wanted to go to culinary school because if I was going to go that route of being a lawyer and have that money, I didn't want my chef to hold a gun to my head because he knew all the recipes and knew what he could do. I can just tell him to go fuck off and I can jump on the line and do it. Problem is, I never left the kitchen. I went
Okay.
to
Yeah.
from regular school, and I call it regular school, to culinary school, and I've never looked back at all.
Do you like culinary schools?
There are aspects I like of culinary schools. A very good question, by the way. There are aspects of it. One of the schools I went to at the time, they had just opened up their campus down in Miami, so it was a lot easier for me to commute. A lot less expensive at that
Right.
point. I think CIA was like 40, 50 grand, and
Yeah, I couldn't afford
yeah,
CIA.
I couldn't either. I did
I
get
mean,
good grades in
never
culinary
happened.
school, but not in regular school. I did
Right. I
kind
would
of,
100%.
yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I
Um,
crushed culinary school,
yeah.
but I didn't like some of the ways they kind of promoted you to being a chef. That you can get done with culinary school, and I was the only one going through culinary at that time in the culinary program, and I was doing it. So I only went Saturdays and Sundays, which meant I worked Monday through Saturday. And I
Right.
two. I mean, I felt like my dad. Traveling uphill during the snow and da. I
Oh
worked
yeah.
literally
Oh yeah.
two.
I
Yeah,
had 3 jobs in
yeah,
Philly.
yeah,
I mean, it was
yeah.
it was insanity.
Yeah, and you look back at it. I worked hard, but I definitely partied hard. That's a whole nother conversation. Um,
Yeah.
so,
I can't tell you all my things.
no, we don't have enough time in the day,
I don't have enough lawyers.
right? But um, it's just this bug that got into me. And I think to me, I was actually really young when I can still remember that first meal. My mom will tell you it's lamb chops, and I was 3 years old, and I ate like 18 lamb chops. Now, 18 lamb chops to a kid was, you had the tender and the loin. I'd eat the loin and a little bit, whatever meat was left on the bowl and I couldn't get to, my mom was eating. She's like, "Don't throw that away. I'm not done with that." And I was just moving on, shoveling as fast as I can. The other one was when my grandparents used to come over. Every so often they would take us out. We used to go to this place, and I still remember it. It's Pembroke Road and the Turnpike. It's no longer there. It's long gone. It's called Cataldo's Italian Restaurant. And I feel really bad for every Italian place I go to because I'll have, and I'm talking like that mom and pop Italian place, I'll
Yeah,
have
yeah.
chicken parm and pasta visual. And I literally, because this is, to me, food is transcendent. It's magical. And if I can
Right.
taste that first bite and it transcends me back to when I was 3, then I know they've hit the spot as far as their pasta visual, their chicken parm. But that's the passion that was kind of you know injected into me, if you want to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was. I remember. So so my dad asked me, like I said, when I was in 7th grade, like what I wanted to be, and lawyer was, or politician was going to happen. So then I went and I started taking culinary classes in high school, just family consumer science classes.
We used to call those home
And
ec, by the way.
we created our own acronym for them.
I bet
So it
you
was
did.
FCS. We called it Friends Committing Suicide.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I mean, what a brilliant mind the young mind is. You know what I mean? Really, when the curious you can come up with some zingers.
Well, no,
You really,
I think the mind of a chef works differently from anybody else out there. I mean, we are definitely wired like fucking lunatics. I mean, what we do, what we come up with, some of the shit that comes out of our mouth, like you just said, most people are like, "Did he really just say that?"
Yeah.
And we're just going, "Yeah, he did," and let's move
yeah,
on.
we're like, exactly. I know, and I mean, I can't say everything I put on here because I totally, incriminate myself in a lot of different ways. But I mean, there have been times where I've done some amazingly mean things, and thing is, I'm not a mean, I'm not a mean guy. I'm not intimidating at all. But man, sometimes I can go to 98.6 degrees to 400, like in a heartbeat. Yeah, I mean,
No,
that's the stuff you were never told about in culinary school.
no, but here's the thing: when you went through the ranks to get to the level you're at, what were some of the opportunities that was a challenge for you from the chefs that you worked under?
The number one, I mean, I was very, very lucky. Okay, I worked for people who believed in professionalism. They didn't just practice it, they preached it. And they did it. Did they fly off the handles? Absolutely. Did I see things that were mean, malicious, aggressive, physical? Absolutely. Absolutely. Were they ever wrong? Yeah. Yeah, they were wrong. They were wrong. Did they say what needed to be said? Yeah. They did. Were they patient? Did they give people an opportunity to fix their errors? Yeah. I'm not defending all chefs in the world because, there are some assholes out there. There are some people out there. I don't care who you are. We're first and foremost humans. We're first and foremost human beings. And so you do not get to berate publicly. You can berate all behind closed doors, in my opinion. But never bully somebody. If someone doesn't have the mental capacity to keep up with what you're saying, that is bullying, and that's something I'm very vicious about. It's something I'm very, very I'm much against, because at some point there has to be a purpose for it. There has to be
well, wait.
there has to be an outcome.
You made a comment there, what
sense.
I really liked. You said if someone doesn't have the mental capacity.
Right.
When I hear that, when I see that, and I've been with corporates and independents, and we talked about that during the pre-show. One of the things that I'll never forget, the day that the general manager turned around and we had to fire the acting kitchen manager, and they were promoting me, and first words out of her mouth was like, "You need to fire Papa." And it's an older Haitian guy, and I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, you gotta fire him." I said, "It's the week before Christmas." And I literally had to walk up and blindside this guy and fire him. And I swore from that day forward that will never happen again. So I look at somebody who's not performing well. Is it a reflection of what I'm trying to tell that person what to do? And am I not translating it properly?
Right. So I've had so many different conversations, and people are silly sometimes. One of the biggest platforms I have a problem with, I respect, but I have a problem with at the same time, is LinkedIn. Okay, how many people go on LinkedIn and they send out this, they share this incredible leadership line? And how many times, and no one says this, how many times do you scroll that person and you're like, I worked with you. You don't fucking do that. I know you. I know that you don't, because I work for you. And I've seen how you operate, and I've seen how you do things. And like, just because you put, it's just like the guys who walk around with clipboards. You can have all the clipboards in the world, it doesn't get the work done, right? Like, I don't care who you are. I mean, so that was like, there were so many. I mean, we're hitting a lot of different eras here. I mean, this is our minds as chefs, guys, which isn't.
That's why I kind of let it go for a little bit, and I kind of bring it in with another question.
Yeah, please bring it back whenever you feel like it's out there. But really, I mean, at the end of the day, there's such a lack of saying things or sharing something or saying, you know what, like, that's a great idea, or they do this little thing, and they do this little blurb, and they do this adage, and it's just like, like, why don't you practice what you preach? And
well, what about the chefs? And this is another thing too, that they don't let their staff develop a menu or a recipe idea, and when they do, the chef hides it for themselves. And have you ever come across that in your?
Never. And I can tell you why. And when I worked for country clubs and I worked for all these independent restaurants, stuff like that, even as a line cook, there was an expectation of you knowing and understanding the menu. Did they all have kitchen Bibles? No, they didn't. Did they share your recipes? Did they? No, they absolutely didn't. These are also the same guys who wouldn't do line checks. These are also the same guys who wouldn't say, "Hey, I put a 2 weeks notice in 3 weeks ago," or I gave a notice 3 weeks ago. I want to have a day off, and they said, "No, you can't work." But you told me the day before the schedule goes out. These are the guys who are just really disorganized and really crappy. So them not sharing a recipe is one element of why they suck. It's not just they didn't share recipes.
Well, what about if you shared a recipe with them and they kept it for their own?
The thing is, I've always been very, very open with sharing a recipe, but then if they took it and stuff like that, I never cared. And the reason I didn't care, I think, was because I was naive. I didn't know anything. It was my development. The most important thing that people from a cook perspective to a chef perspective, in my opinion, is you can never take away what somebody learned, ever. And that's the most amazing thing in this industry, right? So if you become an accountant, you get a CPA certification, right? And then in 5 years you don't renew it, your certification goes away, right? And that is a big thing in this industry. If you want to become a certified chef and stuff like that, you don't have to have a certification. I know more chefs who are phenomenal, but they were never part of the ACF. They were never part of World Chefs. They were never part of the competition world. They've never because the rest of their life was a competition.
Right.
And they were not able to reinvest, or they just didn't want to do it. They wanted to focus on their teams. And if their teams were successful, then they were successful, and that was enough for them. And I'm kind of at that boat right now, where the most joy I get out of something is seeing an aha moment, and seeing a moment where I can teach somebody something that they're not going to learn unless they go through the school hard knocks. They're not going to learn it, and they're gonna falter. And sometimes when they falter, and sometimes when they fail, that's the end of them in that road. And what is the repercussions of you losing your job, or you losing that, or the mental stability, or your performance after that? It's shitty. So, I'm very, very, very proactive with what it is. So, for instance, whenever I bring on a sous chef, first thing I have them do is order chemicals. One of the first things I have them do is order chemicals. Okay, no one knows how to order chemicals. No one knows how much they cost. No one knows how to use them. Everyone who does wash and walk, $10. I will give you $1,000 if you can find me a restaurant right now that doesn't have nothing but hot water on a wash and walk right now, because it's not made to be hot. There's living enzymes in there. So if you're using 90 degree to 110, 120 degree water, you're good. But if you're in the 140 mark, you're just killing enzymes. You're just spreading.
Well, you actually just said the temp in our tap water here in Florida, 90 to 110 degrees. That's our tap water in Florida, and you know that because you work down here.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what temperatures. So that's a really humbling thing. On top of that, wash and walk is like $300 for the 2.5 gallon deals of stuff, like the 5 kilos of that's a lot of money. And so when you start recognizing that, there's something that's really kind of cool about that. And so after that, then you start scheduling stewards. No one knows how to schedule, and how do you manage that and stuff like that. And then the next thing I do is whenever there's conflicts with stewards, they're the first people we got to keep happy. You have got to keep those people happy. Even in the corporate world, if that guy wants dinner, he's getting it. He's getting it. And I'll sign off on a check to make the corporate people happy, to sign off on what it is, and I literally, and here's the funny thing is, and I'll tell you this right away, and there's so many things that things that I've learned and stuff like that, but the number one reason that you can put something on a check, so if you have a sous chef and you want to comp any food to employ, you write 2 things: culture, building. Write on the check, send it away. Anyone, not one soul, not the director of finance, not the general manager, not a single soul will care, as long as you put those words, culture, building, and then write your sign and name on it. Number one best excuse you can put on it, free from me to you.
I just want to let you know something. We have some comments coming in.
Okay, go for
it. My second vice president, Robert Coleman, from the Lord's Place, actually. Congratulations to him. Recently, his company was a recipient from the ACF Palm Beach chapter of $5,000 to help them for 5 weeks, not one, but 5 weeks of non-perishable to feed the homeless. This guy is just a nut. He's a great dude.
He's a rock star.
He really is. But he actually, when we were talking about chemicals, that's one of the reasons why I smiled. He probably knew exactly when I read it too. It said, "Not for contract pricing."
Right.
You
Right.
got to
It's
make
funny.
sure.
It's so true. It's so true. So you have these big companies, right? So Hilton
Avendra, one of them.
Hilton is supposed to deal with Cisco,
Right.
not contract,
Right.
through Ecolab, and then U.S. Food, and then all the other big, Marriott, Interstate Hotels Resorts is who I predominantly work for. We work with
Avendra.
U.S. Foods.
Avendra.
We actually work with U.S. Foods.
Yeah, and Avendra.
And so it's not contracted again. Nothing is contracted. You know what is contracted? Chicken fingers.
Yes.
Let that sink in.
Yeah. Really? So let me ask you a question about some of the stuff we were talking about prior to this. And I know we touched on it a little bit prior. You're supposed to be going out to this, your dream job in Idaho.
Right.
We have this debilitating virus, this pandemic that has really destroyed our economy. And how has COVID
Well, you know what?
affected
Let me correct you now. It's destroyed our economy. It's destroyed lives even more.
Oh, yeah. But how has COVID affected you directly?
Very little, actually. I mean, okay. I have to change that.
Well, I know what you meant because we talked prior. So why don't you let everyone know what you do now?
My identity changed.
Thank you.
My mental capacity changed, and the reason why it changed was because I'm in Pennsylvania. For the past 10 years, I've maybe been in this state for maybe 5 months out of those 10 years. Not a long time. All those were visits and stuff like that.
Where's
and so
your
the
hometown?
mindset. Oh, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So the mindset when I go to visit home is it's a visit, and I have a great time, and then a week or so later, it's time for me to go back to my job, and I go back to my identity, and I go back to my to my normal. Okay. Being home for 5 months now, because I got back in January this. So I got back in December, actually, the end of December. Stayed home for Christmas, stayed home for New Year's, and then I was up for contracts. No contracts came in. It is what it is when you have your own business. And then I got another contract in March. So March 3rd to March 22nd, I was in Wisconsin, covering and trying to onboard another chef if we possibly could. And they had gotten rid of another chef, and so they needed the extra help to operate that hotel. It was a Courtyard. No, Holiday Inn. It was a Holiday Inn. I go to so many of them. It was a Holiday Inn. And I was there through when COVID was just beginning to kind of be into effect. And then when I left, Wisconsin was one of the few states that had actually shut down first, where I was at. And the governor there, his name is Evers, was very quick. And I don't know anything really much about him other than his orders were pretty concise, pretty consistent. They were pretty well thought out, in my opinion. But the problem was everything stems from the government's knowledge and timeline, and they don't have a timeline, and they don't have a lot of knowledge either. So what happens was, this is the trickle effect, right? So one person doesn't know, the rest of the people don't know, speculation happens, and then more people just go a little bit crazy. So when I was out there, we had a stay-at-home order put in at 1:30 in the afternoon on one day, to go into effect by 5 o'clock that day. So we had 4.5 hours to shut everything down.
Wow.
Okay. So luckily, I mean, if we call it luck, we didn't have anybody in our restaurant at that moment. Because leading up to it, we didn't have much lunch. We were doing 12 people, 13 people for lunch. So it was already dismal leading up to this. So literally, like right then and there, I went to our general manager and I said, what do we do? And we actually talked very, very briefly. And she asked me, she's like, Vic, what does this feel like to you? Like this whole concept, without knowing what I know now and stuff like that. And I said, it's a hurricane. It's an absolute hurricane situation. It's a state of emergency. People are shutting down stuff by 5 o'clock. They're telling people to shelter, stay at home, be safe. It's a hurricane. And I said, the problem is we don't know when the hurricane's hitting or when it ends. That's the problem. And I said, what do we tell our staff? And it was really complicated because we were working for a very, very, very large management company. 1,300 hotels globally is how much our company manages. Every state was different. Every county was different. Every country, frankly, was different. We were on phone calls with 500 people. We were maxing out Zoom things, trying to figure out. People were asking questions. Pennsylvania hadn't shut down yet. So there were people from Pennsylvania on there. Some of these properties didn't have executive chefs on there. So they had food and beverage directors on there. Some of them had chef and bees, who were in charge of front of the house, who were in charge of liquor ordering and stuff like that. Things that normal chefs really kind of shouldn't be a part of, but maybe that's the way we're going at this point. I don't know. I hope not. But it was very, very confusing, very chaotic. The biggest question we had from a mid-level management employer was, are these people laid off or are they furloughed? And we never got answers on that because frankly, they didn't know the answers either. And they did not want to do a blanket thing. And on top, to make it even worse is we had, 900 owners that we had to deal with. Some of our properties had unions we had to deal with. Where how does that work? In respect to keeping people employed and stuff like that. We recommended quickly though that use your vacation time, use your holiday time, use your PTO, which is PTO is a scam. I mean, put that out there.
Tell us how you really feel.
Oh, it is. It's a scam. Absolutely. If PTO is so great, why don't the upper management people have that? I mean, frankly put, if it's such a great program and believes in it and rewards people for being there, why can't we just have vacation time and pay it out if you leave in good standing?
Right.
Honestly. Anyway, I digress. So it was really weird. It was really, really weird. And then so what happened is I had been off for a few months, went to work for 3 weeks, flew back to Pennsylvania, had 9 people on my flight, which,
it's a sense of surrealism. To me, it's like almost like a zombie apocalypse, and
You know why it's really weird though for me, because it is. But in those zombie apocalypse movies, right? The sun wasn't shining. It wasn't blue skies. I'm very, very weather oriented. And so if it's sunny outside, I want to be outside if I can, Mm-hmm. And that's the creepiest part of this whole thing, in my mind, is the people are weird, which, guess what? We're all humans, and I get that. But really, the weather to me contradicts
what's going on.
Right.
And one of the things, too, that you mentioned when we were talking earlier is the functional depression, because now you're home. You lost your identity.
Right. So you lost your job, you lost your identity, and now at some point it was mini vacation, right? It's the 7 steps of maybe, I don't know whatever we want to call it. But it was, but then after 2 weeks, I kept having this thought in my mind, and it still comes back to me: am I a failure because I'm home doing nothing? Did I fail? And what a dark and raw thought, right? But at the same point, I'm one of those people, I love accomplishing things, and I have to produce something to make myself feel better. So I definitely had my little moment of depression. I definitely had my little moment of functioning depression. It still happens all the time. I think everybody has it. Really. I think that when people think of the word depression, they think of it's, you're in your room, you're happy, you're sad, it is that. It's conflictingness. It's butterflies in your stomach. It's just glazing out into the middle of nothing. It's trying to be healthy and read a book, and then all of a sudden not realizing what the hell you just watched and why am I 2 seasons past what I actually remember on a Netflix show. It's haziness. It's that. So what I started to try to do is really like one, exercise, and I hate, no one likes exercising. Like, listen, I don't like running either, but you get yourself into a habit and you get yourself into going out and at least going for a walk every single day and seeing sunshine, seeing people, you'll see happy things. Well, so for instance,
it's one of those things when we were on the conversation with the ACF, Lisa Dorfman, who was on there, and she's the running nutritionist. One of the things that she said is that the endorphins are produced, and endorphins make you feel happy. And what you're saying is when you see things outside to be happy, it's pretty tough to be, and that's one of the reasons why I post about what are you grateful for, right? Instead of taking the energy towards the politics and these
the easy stuff.
Well, and the scenario of this was a Chinese plot, this was that plot, this is this Republican thing, and Democrats should have done. It's enough with that energy. It has to be drawn to what you're saying. Draw it into some energy that could be positive.
Yeah. So in Pennsylvania, one of the state order homes, there's exceptions to it. So one of the exceptions that we have is if you can go fishing. Actually, you can actually go trout fishing. But the other thing too is like if you are going for mental health, reasons, you can go somewhere. So for instance, all of our state parks are still open right now.
Yeah, not Florida. Down here in South Florida, we're not. They're closed.
Oh, that's incredible. Okay, so like I would have definitely a difficult time down there.
Jacksonville just opened up the beaches because the governor just said they can't.
I saw that. I saw that.
But they put a thing. I didn't realize this. I thought they opened it, but they said there's a stipulation. You can go walking on the beach. You can go fish at the beach. You can walk. Do everything except sunbathe on the beach.
Right. That's what I've heard. So I heard that you can swim there, you can walk there, you just can't be sedentary.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Loiter. You can't loiter,
right.
I guess. So what I do is I'll just go for a drive, and if I ever get pulled over, which hasn't happened here, knock on wood. But some of it is for mental reasons. It's like, hey, I just need to get out, and I'm driving to a state park so I can go for a walk and help my mental health. And people have said that a few times here, and it's actually worked, and no one's gotten any types of fines on it. But what's amazing is when you walk around, when you drive around, you see dads playing with kids. You see more kids playing outside than ever before. It's pretty incredible, actually. You see people with their windows down. I know it sounds crazy, but people with their windows down and they're playing music, I really like that.
Not down here. You're lucky. It's 86 already, and it's not even 12 o'clock.
Oh yeah, and it's 93% humidity. Yeah, you breathe and sweat.
Because you were here. Let's talk about that. I mean, you've been here. We've talked about it, and I just got news this morning with the care package and the PPP, and we talked about that in the pre-show. And I made a comment yesterday about Ruth Chris and Steak Shake or Shake Shack, whatever it was, and the guy's $400 million rich, and he got this plan. The issue, my cousin who is the CPA, he said, listen, that's not part of the deal. That's another part of the bailout. This is it's different from what the Small Business Administration is. We compared it in the background of here's a $25 billion check to the airlines. Mm-hmm. We were given a $350 or $35 billion check, but this is a check that has been actually, basically everybody has their hand in the cookie pot.
Right. So here's a question for you, and I looked this up actually a few days ago because I'd read a report that said there was 129 hotels that got approved for the assistance. And I'm a hotel guy. I that's my world, so I don't know the independent restaurant world too well. I worked in them, but that's not who I predominantly work with. So whenever I hear the word hotel resort, I'm like, oh, okay, I pay attention to that. So then I started figuring out, well, how many hotels are there in the United States right now? I mean, and it's 52,000. Okay, so there's 52,000 hotels and 129 got approved. Like, it's not a lot.
But on the grand
That's
scheme of things, if you look at how many independent
and restaurants, it got to
restaurateurs,
be worse.
right?
There's more restaurants and hotels any single day of the week. So like in that reality and that ratio and that absolute ratio, right? Because it's wow,
I mean,
wow,
you were spurting out some statistics as far as what our what the restaurant industry does to
right,
contribute to the national growth product of what we do.
right. So we account for about 2 points of that. Um, GDP, and then in 2018, our industry was an $18 trillion global industry, which is massive. So we haven't lost $18 trillion in our stock market yet. We haven't. Our stimulus package of 2.2 trillion is still not even close to what our whole hospitality tourism industry is globally. It's incredible.
And we also
It's
account
incredible.
for
I mean, like when this
16%.
was happening, when COVID-19 was happening, Orlando was losing $500 million worth. At one point, I was reading an article that said they lost $500 million of banquet revenue. And here's the crazy thing is, I do want to eventually get to this, is what's it look like when we're opening? Because I'm starting to think about opening. Okay, like I was on a call a few weeks ago with some chefs, and they had said, okay, if we can make it, we can survive it. What does opening up look like?
Show.
Shit show. And you know why? Like, I mean, like
No product.
There's no product. We've laid off everybody. So how long does it take to hire somebody? Well, okay, so say you hire your people. Okay, so how long does a background check take? How long does it take to train people? I just said there was 52,000 hotels, right? Can you imagine 52,000 hotels in the United States doing grand openings? Think about that. I mean, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That's where are you getting the people?
Yeah, we were just on a
And
call.
now here's the other aspect of it too, is I was talking to a hotel in Miami, a different one, and they said, hey, we're thinking about laying off our executive chef because he's making over $100,000 a year. Huge expense.
Right.
And I said, okay, well, is he on any type of performance plan? And they said, yes, he is. I'm like, okay. Do you trust your sous chef right now? And I said, I need you to really be honest. Do you trust your sous chef? I said, you have to have somebody there, to get you through this. You can't just have, a front desk guy making sandwiches and putting it in a sundry location. You still have a brand to uphold, right? Even respect.
Do they still have, what's their occupancy level? Are they one of those that cater to the airlines and the pilots?
So they have contracts.
Okay.
So they
have to be open.
To be open. They're within a few miles of a hospital. Have people staying there who are at the same time. So I was talking to them and they're like, what do we do? And I said, well, I mean, one thing, and again, this is controversial, is we shouldn't be lowering our hotel rates at all. At all. That happened in 9/11. They lowered their hotel rates. It happened in Hurricane Sandy. They lowered their hotel rates. The people who are traveling, be fair. Don't price gouge. But, rooms that are normally $120, $130 should not be $88 a night.
Why?
It should. Because I think that you still are going to be gaining. Those people, no matter what, are coming to that property. No matter what.
But here's the thing. You mentioned some natural disasters, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a pandemic. Right. We're going to see,
with no end date.
Right. We're going to see a difference. Like, I was on a call recently. There was 4 master chefs. Brad from CIA was the head.
Brad Barnes.
Brad Barnes was on it.
Yeah, I just saw him in
yeah, and it was a great conversation. But the thing is, this is an uncharted territory. Now, this is why I've always said this. This is an uncharted territory. We're great as chefs. We're perfectly set up to get through this because we have the ability to be flexible and think upon our feet. And I'm not saying that because I'm a chef. It's what we know. It's reality. We really do. Oh, here's a BEO pop-up, and there's like 15 extra guests on it. Thanks, I don't have enough food. But one of the things is the serve safe and the cleanliness I don't think Yelp no more will be his sauce was too salty. Is I watched a server touch. All right. One of the things,
Oh, wow. Okay.
right, and that's what I feel.
Yeah.
And one of the guy,
Okay.
Anthony, was on the call with Brad, and he was part of that team. He had mentioned that you're going to see when they clean a table, the server's going to have to wash their hands. My question is that means labor is going to be increased because
Right.
for every time that server is gone from that table and they touch something and have to wash their hands, 20 seconds, and you talked about efficiencies earlier, 20 seconds times the day, an 8-hour shift, that
It's
increases.
going to be 5 hours of your day.
Right. What about chemicals, as you spoke about?
How much chemicals are we going through? What's your water bill going to be like?
Right. So,
I mean, and that stuff adds up.
but my thing with the comment about don't increase your rates is people, the public, will be extremely nervous to go into a hotel, as we know with all these different like 2020 under the radar.
Right. So when you say people, who do you think those people are traveling? Who is traveling?
Oh, I
with this
travel.
epidemic?
I travel, but I'd
Okay,
still
so
be
you
a
were-
little bit
so for business.
right.
Right. So there's not going to be transient at all.
No, not for a while. So I don't see 52,000 hotels opening up all at once.
No, I don't see it either. I think that. I mean, I'm thinking. Right now most occupancies are at 14%,
If that.
if that.
And I'll tell you.
Meanwhile, the make or break for an occupancy is around 43% for a hotel.
Well, and you said you were a hotel guy too, and
Yeah.
what about those hotels that go for PPP? You made a comment earlier, and that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they are. I think there's a few things. Well, number one, I think that what they're asking for is really inflated. Okay, and the reason I say that is because they've already laid off these people, but you have to take a look at what are the revenue generators in a hotel and in a resort. Okay, so sometimes it's recreational. So there's golf. There could be clay shooting, there could be bass fishing, there could be bowling. I mean, whatever you want to do.
Right.
Okay, so that's gone. So you don't need all those people because you're just not going to be able to. I mean, I know Florida's doing golfing right now, which
it's closed.
is incredible.
No, they're all closed.
Oh, they're all closed.
Yeah, they actually put an order out. I know Bradshaw in Palm Beach said that if private communities had HOAs, if they didn't shut down the gym and the pool area, they would come in and arrest the board.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so that changed. So the other so you have restaurants, right, and then you have banquet business. Okay, banquet business are bread and butter.
Yeah, not restaurant, not F&B. It's not the restaurant outlets. It's definitely the banquets is where the money's made.
It's definitely the banquet business. Definitely the banquet business. Okay, so you no longer have properties who need banquet chefs. You no longer have properties who need banquet servers. You no longer have properties who are going to make revenues on AV equipment rental, which doesn't go towards food, but it goes to operations in general and the overall success of a hotel and operation. I mean, it's revenue, right? Doesn't matter how many, the money's still green, right? So at the end of the day, you're having a whole segmentation where costs are completely controllable to some degree that are your bread and butter, and they're gone. So people ask me, okay, Vic, restaurant profitability is what? Margin of profit is 4 to 6%, roughly.
If you're doing well.
If you're doing well. Restaurant or a hotel, you're in the 8, 10%. Resorts, you're in the 14%. Country clubs, they don't care. Food's amenity, right? They're dues to pay their bills, right? So, like that. So the reason why those resorts and those properties is because they have more amenities generating revenue, right? So when you're taking away those activities, or when you're taking away things that, one, can identify your property, but two, are subliminal, but yet are real true drivers for your business, and your banquet business is down, but you've just said that, okay, well, I had 388 employees, I need payroll for 388 employees, but when I open up, I'm only going to need 150 or 100. I mean, that's pretty inflated. And now, if I'm my own restaurant business and stuff like that, and I had 50 people on payroll and stuff like that, yeah, I'm going to apply for 50 people. But if I'm a hotel and a resort, I think you really like you could inflate it so you could get a lot of money.
Well,
And
we also talked about not one person owns a resort. We talked that
right,
many
so that's
people.
the other thing too. So like when you own hotels and you own resorts, um, this is a hobby. Okay, like at the end of the day, this is not you've already made a lot of money, and this is not your number one source of income. Okay, because I work for them. Most hotels are owned by what? Companies, and they're owned by people who are investors. And there's a group of investors, 5 or 6 people, and they're worth a fair amount of money. And some of it are doing for legacy reasons, some are doing for identity, some of it are doing for cutting costs for a business plan that they have. Some are doing it for
An investment.
investment at the end of the day. I mean, like they're not bad people. That's just and they're not bad businesses. That's just part of their strategic plan, whether it's a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, whatever they want to do, and what they're looking at. They're making money for it, but the number one source of those incomes of the group's incomes or the business incomes is not this hotel. Now there are hoteliers out there. There are people who own restaurants, who are restaurateurs, who own them and stuff like that, who have made it, who have done very responsible things and stuff.
Well, we talked behind the scenes too, and it's a perfect opportunity to segue into it. We talked about Thomas Keller, your old boss, Jean George, my old boss, Wolfie, is on this committee now with Trump. And it was very disconcerting to see that it looks like the representation is dealt with the higher end white tablecloth, and there's no representation. And you made a comment about Emmett. You meant no, Oompa Loompa. You made a comment about your buddy Emmett, and that is extremely conservative. He's a franchise McDonald owner. Go ahead and talk about that.
I'll be this guy today. So I will call Mr. Patterson out in the best possible way. He is a gentleman who owns a fair amount of franchises from McDonald's. These are the guys that we should really be investing in, frankly. I mean, and it's not the conglomerate McDonald's. It's not the
CEO.
The CEO of McDonald's. I mean, like, I'm sorry, I just don't think that makes sense. What makes sense is the actual franchisees, okay? Because these are the people who are in their communities, who are on the ground, who are the local employers, right? Who invest in these people. I mean, Mr. Patterson is one of the. He's brilliant. He is a very, very brilliant man. He's very conservative. He and I don't agree on a lot of different things. But what he does do is he is fair. And he is really a pillar of the community in Gettysburg and New Oxford and York, the York Adams counties and stuff, South Central Pennsylvania. I mean, he hires more high school kids than any other employer in the South Central area. I mean, like, he's just – he is somebody who, will do things for the community. He does fundraisers for them. He's donated a lot of money, a lot of time. He's one of those people that can represent the industry in a really, really, really positive way, because he's done it successfully for so long. And his restaurants. And I call them restaurants. I mean, some people call them fast food. No, they're restaurants. I mean, the guy he tries to source as much food as possible that's local, that's 100% beef. His restaurants, bathrooms have always been clean. I mean, I know it's a silly thing, but I mean, it's something that's important. His staff is always
coming out the other side of this, though. Coming out the other side of this, like I mentioned, coming out of the other side of COVID-19, there's going to be a lot more involvement as far as way we do things. I don't, how much more of this distancing.
Well, it's interesting. Like we got fine dining table. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's what I was saying. Okay. How much did that?
So we have 4 or 5 dining chefs on there, and I'm not saying that Jean George is not a representation of a segmentation in the industry. I'm not saying Thomas Keller isn't brilliant, and I'll pick it right now. Like, if you want to hire me for the French Laundry when this opens up, I'd love the stage, and I'll peel your carrots. I mean, I will do that.
Right.
But we have seen in the past 10 years fine dining is not a segmentation that's growing. Okay, one, people can't afford it. These are destination restaurants. They are doing extraordinarily well. I mean, Jean-Georges has an empire. He doesn't have a restaurant
So
group.
does
He's not a restaurant
so
group.
does Wolfgang
He is
Puck.
an empire, and Wolfgang Puck is an empire. And that is no fault of their own. That is through blood, sweat, tears, hard work, all that stuff. I mean, I believe in capitalism. I believe in that kind of good work comes to those who work hard. Good things come to those who work very, very hard and are consistent and are fair and stuff like that. And I believe in those gentlemen. I believe in them. What I don't know is if it's the best representation of our industry.
No,
And
I don't
it's
think
not,
at all.
It's not a representation at all.
It is. It is.
I mean,
It's a lopsided one, and we talked about it. I mean,
right.
a guy like
It's
a guy like Rodney Mayo, who has more than 500 employees, who has 17 units, who is the guy that cares, took a foundation and raised $100,000, and then donated his own $100,000 to match it to have these 7 units get up and running to bail out industry workers. That's more of a representation than, look at the guy from Brio Bravo, a 71 unit chain around the country. They're going to file for bankruptcy. They're not going to be able to make it.
right.
Whether or not that was bad management on their part, it's still the segmentation that, you're looking at one aspect of it and it's all white tablecloth. My biggest concern is, what are these major companies? God forbid they show come, 2020, the end December, early 2021, and it shows that Steak Shack and Ruth Chris CEOs take a bonus of millions of dollars.
Right. So my question to you is, like, the past 10 years, there have been there's been incredible economic growth. Okay, There has been, and whether we agree on how we got there or if it's inflated or whatever, reality of the situation is, like, the economy has gone up around 8,000 points, 10,000 points, right? And the thing that I struggle with the most is, there have been companies out there that have been record profits, right? There have been not revenue, profits,
like Amazon
and and
Georgia Pacific.
My question is, if those were profits, if you were willing to give out those bonuses, and in 1 month's time frame, you're out of money. That's a problem. That's a massive, massive problem. That's a massive problem. The other thing that I wanted to kind of bring up too, and is, like, these hotels and these businesses and resorts and stuff like that. When you get a reservation, you do it months out, right? And say you put 50% down. Sometimes you pay for the whole hotel room. You know what I mean? Down. And what's happening is, these companies have already collected that money, and it'd be interesting to see, like, what their return policy is right now. Do they give it all back? Do they give 50% back? Do they give you a credit for next year if they can keep it? Because at the end of the day, if that money's in that account right now, that's supporting their business right now.
Well, that's like buying a gift card from your local restaurant. You're giving them funds now when they do open at the whatever cost might be. My thing is, like, for instance, like ACF National Convention is July, and a lot of my members are asking me. I just got a call yesterday. What's going on? It's the deadline's May 1st. Do we need to do this? And we've already paid for the president and the first vice president full last year because it was cheaper. That doesn't mean that if the money's there and it's going to be in October, then so be it. It's going to be in October. We can afford it. It's not thousands.
Where's it at this year? Just curious.
Dallas.
Oh man, if it's October, I might be able to come.
Well, yeah. If I don't know if it hasn't been changed yet. I mean, I reached out to Jamie Booth to find out what's going on. I'm actually presenting too this year again.
Oh, nice, cool.
Yeah, real quick, because it's getting a little bit to that hour and a half. And it's been a great conversation. And
we can talk all day.
Yeah, actually, it's been 2 hours for us because we started at 10. One of the things I noticed, you mentioned that things are different for you. You mentioned that the functional depression, your bouts of depression, you've been at home now for 5 months, you've lost your identity. One of the things I've noticed is, if you don't follow Victor on his Facebook page, and all you need to do is ask me in the feed, and I'll get you his name. He has an IG account, and Victor's actually been doing classes like the rest of us chefs. We've been doing classes, and
Yeah.
I don't know who the hell is filming you. Is this one of those things that you decided to?
It's funny actually. So I have no idea how it started, and it's not the traditional like, oh, we mix all this stuff together and I talk and this. It's more of the assembly of it. And one of the things that people ask me is like, Victor, what do you do for a living? Like, what do you actually do? And
I clean dishes.
Sometimes I'm the world's most expensive dishwasher. Sometimes, but it was really, really hard for me to identify because, then the next question people ask you right away is, oh, what's your signature dish? Hotels and resorts are my signature dish. I have to be good at a lot of different things or I don't have a job, kind of thing. And so I don't have a plate that self-identifies with what I am. I know that like my style is definitely more simple, more recognizable, fundamentals, knife skills. Like I believe in those things so very much that those are my craftsmanship, because we're assemblers. We're not creators in a lot of different ways. Mother Nature is really the artist. We're just assemblers. That's what Marco Pierre White said, and I love him for that. The other thing that people need to realize is there needs to be more cooks and less chefs. And I saw a friend of mine who actually, his name is Tim, and he used to work for Mario Batali at the corporate office. He was his like opening senior chef and stuff like that. So whenever he was opening up a restaurant or a concept or whatever, he was like his corporate chef. Very cool guy. He told me he would mention to me a few times, more cooks, less chefs, and he got it from a bumper sticker or something like that, 4 or 5 years ago and stuff. And so this was one of those ways where I could really kind of get back to what I wanted to do, which is cook more, and to kind of show people. Instead of telling people what I do, show people what I do, because I'm very visual, and I can talk for a certain amount of time, but then at some point I just whatever. I just get into a zone, and you can see it in the moments where I start forgetting to breathe, and I have saliva, and I'm like, you're like sliding, like it's a Northeast thing, it's a chef thing, like whenever you're plating, you're so focused you forget to breathe. Okay, like it's one of those things like you don't want to move, and I'm still a proud chef who has like my callus on his knuckle where he holds a knife. I have burns and I have whatever. And so this was something where I kind of got to go back and revisit a lot of different things. And I did a lot of pastries when I was younger. I'm not doing a lot of them now anymore, so I'm just getting here fat, more than anything. But I wanted to help out what my identity was a little bit better and kind of get back to it. And it's kind of been a cool little way for me to, because it's selfish. It was kind of for me more than anything. It wasn't for
anybody else. Do you think it's selfish, or you think it's more therapy?
I think it's a lot. I think it's all the above. I think it's selfish. I think it's time passing. I think it's healthy because you're not sitting down, you're standing, you're at least walking. I'm getting my steps in at least, on my iWatch, I can kind of track it a little bit. The smell is so much better, in the house and stuff like that. And I get to cook for people I don't really get to cook a lot for. And that's my mom, my dad, and my sister. So, there's a lot of birds with one stone with something like this. And, it's just, like I said, it's definitely therapeutic. But really it's something I'm kind of looking forward to. Do I see myself continuing on and doing more videos? Yeah, probably. But, once we get up and running, once I get to Idaho, once I get to the thing, it's probably going to stop. Just reality.
Game on. That's how it's going to be.
But I definitely like connecting to people through that. And, the interesting thing about it is like some people like there are Food Network cooks, there are cooking show cooks, and then there are chefs. And to me, my career is not a hobby. My career is not some fun little thing that we get to do. I'm very serious about it. I love what I do. I get super annoyed if something doesn't work out. Cooking something in a home is very different than cooking something in a kitchen. unbelievably different.
Yes.
You know, just from having one cutting board when I'm used to having 10.
But
Just
it's
the lighting
challenges
is
that
better.
it's a challenge that
The
you can
kitchens,
overcome. You know, it's a challenge we can overcome. You have to think about it
yeah,
when you go to these different kitchens and you do different competitions and you're in different kitchens.
right,
It's giving you the ability to be flexible and kind of spur of the moment. So
yeah,
you're heightening your skills.
right. You know, it's interesting. The hardest part, people ask me, like, Vic, you know, you go to all these properties and like, what's the hardest part about it? Hardest part is figuring out where the hell the sheet pan is, because water doesn't boil in different temperatures in all these kitchens, right? You know, food does. Everyone organizes their walk-ins the exact same way. There's always a dairy, meat cooler, produce is in
You
it. Then they have
hope
a production cooler, and then they have a freezer.
you hope they do.
You hope they do. I mean, sometimes there are reach-ins and stuff, but I mean, really, at the end of the day, like, you know, plate is a plate is a plate. You know, sometimes the questions are, hey, do I need to put a sterno in this hot box, or does the hot box work by itself? You know, those. But like, really, the toughest thing about kitchens and going into it is, where are the pans, where are the sauce pots, where are the whisks, where are the. You can tell me where those things are. Go me on a little walk right now. You know, and then I can do that. And I can go in and I can operate really fast, you know. And then the next question I have is, okay, give me my Cisco rep, give me my US Foods rep, talk to me about purveyors. Like, the last property I was at, oh my God, I won't tell you what the property was, but
Is that the one in Sebring?
I can't tell you which one it was. It's not in Florida,
though. Oh, okay, that's what I was going to say.
But they had their director of finance. I walked into that property and they had around $200,000 or $100,000 worth of unpaid invoices. Yeah. You want to talk about a shit show?
Wow.
That was bad. That was really, really bad. And they're like, Victor, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to fix this? I'm like, I don't know this person. I'm not even from this area. Like, I don't have a network of people I can call and say, hey, help me out with the introduction. Like, I remember I literally rented I was in the hotel van, the shuttle, because I didn't have a car there. And there I am driving to the farm, literally, like, stopping there, and I'm like, hi, I'm so-and-so. Like, I realize, like, our business hasn't paid you in a while. Like, give me an invoice. Don't give me a statement. That's not an invoice. I need an invoice. Like, walk me through how we figure this out. And like, that one was like $4,000 or $5,000. And like, you know, these are, you know, not honest people. You know what I mean? These are farmers. These are, you know, local purveyors that we've, you know, canners and jars, Mennonites. I mean, you know, they have no heart. They have no mean bone in their body. But at the end of the day, they want to get paid.
Yeah, they've got to live too.
That was tough. That was tough. That was the first time.
So one of the comments came in a while back when it was about the recipes. Millie's asking, or she's actually making a comment. She says some people think that their recipe is what keeps them at their job or their reputation. They fear someone else can do what they're doing and feel useless because there's anybody can do it. She goes on and says, or they sign a paper and don't allow them to share recipes in certain places due to the competition in the industry.
Right.
And then they are forced to not do this. Is this true? Yeah, to some extent, yeah. There are some places that will do that. They can't. They have to sign a waiver. But that's very few and far between.
And good luck. I mean, even Coca-Cola's had their stuff leaked out.
Yeah. And
you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Heinz 57, people know what that recipe sauce is. I signed, when I left one of the country clubs I worked with, I signed an agreement saying that I was not allowed to work for a country club for 3 years. Can they go after me? I mean, it never came to fruition. I never worked for a country club afterwards. I don't know.
Well, that's more of a non-compete, though.
That was a non-compete clause, exactly. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
we have bigger fish to fry than that.
I've never been in a situation where someone said, like, I can't take this recipe and steal it. Like, and if I did, I wrote it down anyway. I did. I mean, like, it's you know, there's something really malicious in not sharing what you know.
Well, that's part of mentoring and being a chef, though. Right,
or being a decent human being. You know what I mean? Like, so in that same, you know, the idea of not sharing information is that same concept. Like, if someone's going to street sweep your walkway, there's one sign at the end of the road, and there's not a sign at the other end of the road. Your neighbor comes over and says, "Hey, they're going to street sweep," and like, does that neighbor have the responsibility just to keep quiet and just say, "Hey, like, you know, let them get their stuff towed"? You know, like I guess the idea of not sharing information is really silly to me.
Well, I think not
It's
sharing information as far as what we do for a living.
it's a tantrum.
Well,
You know.
it's we listen. My mother is the one that taught me to give me the palate. Might not have taught me the right skill set. I
Right.
learned that from the School of Hard Knocks, not from culinary school.
Right.
I've had my mentors, and I still can talk. And Alan Lazar is one of mine. He happens to
Yeah.
be not only is he a member of our ACF, but he was my first butchering teacher ever at Johnson and Wales.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we keep in contact, and he's just an individual that I always look up to, even though I'm taller than him. McCrana is also a mentor for both of us. I mean, he's just a very soft spoken. He's a great guy. Can't stand when I call,
God, he's funny.
but he can't stand when I say "all rise" because every time he came in the room as the president, I would "all rise." Now there's a show called "All Rise." He's like,
Yeah.
"You
Yeah.
bastard!" Every time I hear that now, I have to think of you, and I'm like, "Hey, I did something right."
So he's going to his Catholic
Yeah,
church for
yeah.
this album.
But that's the stories and the I think the camaraderie that not only the ACF but most chefs do. We're out
Yeah.
for the help of our industry. At the end of the day, I mean, we can sit here and talk until we're blue in the face of what it looks like on the other side of COVID-19. We have no idea. I know that panel of
Yeah.
master chefs really have no idea. Are there going to be standard operating procedures that are going to be different? More, most indubitably.
Yeah.
Is ServSafe going to change? I probably.
I'm a proctor for ServSafe. I've been getting emails in regards to it. Um, I mean, they don't know enough information.
So wait a minute. I've got a guy. Somebody just posted J.N. Hunts. He says, "I'm going to complain to corporate about this shitty Wi-Fi in the hotel."
I like it. So he and I worked in Florida. He was a line cook at one of the Italian restaurants down there.
Well, he's been laying pavers too, like an MFer. He said also. So.
Oh, good. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. He is a good guy. I like him. I remember he annoyed me one time though because he was like, I had a chef one time who couldn't stand whistling, and he fired some guy for whistling, and then they were out there breaking. So like fast forward like 5 years, like he was whistling. I'm like, oh my god, stop whistling! And he looked dead right in the face. He just kept on whistling. I'm like, I like that. I like you.
So the funniest thing is
that was him though. That was funny.
Yeah, Jovan Durkovic, which is the cousin of the famous tennis player. He was one of the food fanatic or one of the regional chefs for U.S. Foods, and I remember I was brought up to corporate and we were doing an ideation about some stuff, and I walk in the back and I start whistling. He looks dead at me. He goes, "No whistling in the kitchen." He goes, "You know what happens when people used to whistle in the kitchen? That means the guy who would taste the food died. That means the king was poisoned." And I looked at him and I go, "Lighten up, Francis," and I walked away.
Oh my god. Oh no. I had one guy. Oh my god. Well, this is the other thing we could talk about all damn day is how do you manage and how do you build people and how do you and the toughest thing that I ever had to do, like some people ask me like what's the toughest part of my job too, and finding where the sheep pans are and stuff like that. But the second thing was
dealing with people.
I was going in when I was 22, 25, 26. I'm 29 now, and going into these operations as executive chef or food and beverage director or whatever, and having to tell someone who's been in the industry for 15 years or 20 years or 30 years, telling them my expectations for them and what to do. And that is, to this day, it's still one of the toughest things ever because they'll be like, I've been in the industry for 30 years and this, that, and the other. And I said, yeah, man, I don't know what to tell you. You can be a part of the problem or you can stay out of my way. Your choice. I don't need to be fired by you. I can fire myself. Thank you very much. So, that to me is still one of the toughest things to overcome. And it's not a me against them aspect. It's not a me against, how do I make this person feel bad and stuff like that. I don't have a mean bone in my body. I do. I do have a mean bone in my body, but at the end of the day, like I don't go looking for it. Why? Like it doesn't I don't know why. But
so JN just actually commented again. He goes, "I forced my banquet cooks to whistle because I'm dead and I won't know they're talking to me. So that's what he was doing.
I like him. He's a good guy.
Well, Victor, I like you said a couple of different times, we could talk all day, and it's been great talking to you today. Keep in touch. Keep on doing the IG. I love it. More people need to go watch him on the IG. If you want to know where he is on IG, go ahead and there's a comment box. Go ahead or down the below comment. We'll get you over to his IG account. If you want to know where he is, just look for Victor or email me first, and I'll get you over to Victor's page, and you guys can do it. Any last words, Victor?
Just thank you. I mean, I think a lot of people are really kind of in this boat where there's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, and just sometimes if you can just make someone smile a little bit more, I think that's really the first step in getting people a little bit happier. If you take a look at the United States, we know how to build people we know how to build teams. We are the industry of misfits. We are the industry of the forgotten. We are the industry of the unpaid, the whatever you want to say. We are just ones. And if we can keep positive with it, we can definitely get through this very, very, very easily if you just guys give people some trust. Sometimes when I talk to my new cooks and stuff like that, the number one way you build trust is through loyalty. And sometimes the loyalty and how you build that is just being side by side by them. And, that doesn't mean physically. That means, just checking up on people. If you got an elderly neighbor, call in the store and call them and say, hey, I'm going to go to the store. Do you need eggs? Do you need anything?
Mutual respect.
Follow the golden rule a little bit. You know what I mean? Honk your horn less. Don't be a dick. I mean, my God, we got enough of them already. We don't need 350 million people being dicks. Let karma take care of them.
Exactly. I appreciate it very much. So you have a great rest of your Sunday. Enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Get out and go to a park and take your mental break.
That's what I'm actually going to take my dog for a walk.
There you go, man.
Dog.
Awesome.
We're going to go to Pine Grove Furnace and go for a state park and just go for a walk and walk a river. So it'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, and lastly, real quick, Millie just popped up and said, when you can't be mad, humor goes a long way. Thank you. So she's saying thank you, us.
100%.
Yeah, definitely. And humor is the best medicine, I think, besides food.
Absolutely. And you know what? I was going to say this to you. One of the biggest things for my functioning depression was a line that I would use all the time is work is my best medicine, and not being able to work, that's tough.
And that's one of the reasons why I started the broadcast is because a lot of people, and we talked with Alan Madick from the Suicide Prevention Foundation. It's social distancing, not mentally distancing. So we still need to reach out to talk to those people and find out, hey, how are you? It's okay not to be okay, as Chef Artletta says. And, that's one of the things, I guess this is one of my functionality of me now is to help people out in that way.
Right.
So
100%. Well, one person at a time. We got this.
Yeah, definitely, man. I appreciate it. Go enjoy your walk with your dog, man. I'll talk to you later, brother.
Absolutely.
All right,
Bye.
man. Thanks a lot.